Hello, everyone. My name is Colin Jones, former president of City Club, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Commissioner Position 1 debate with candidates Candace Avalos, Tim Du Bois.
Hello, everyone. I'm the previous president on the City Council, Julie.
Hello. Obviously, this is not the most ideal way to hold a debate, but we are adapting to a surreal and scary moment, and civic engagement is more critical than ever. That is why City Club has shifted all electoral programming online to be free for all. Thank you in advance for your patience with any technical difficulties that we will almost inevitably encounter. If you missed one of our previous debates, you can watch it and get all of City Club's election coverage on our website at pdxcityclub.org. As anyone who has connected with the organization over the last 100 years could guess, City Club is an organization that relies heavily on ticketed event revenue. So to continue this programming, I am asking you to donate today. If every viewer donated $5, that would ensure we're able to keep offering free programming to help our democracy thrive. Donate now by texting Support City Club to 44321. That's Support City Club to 44321. I also want to encourage folks to engage in the conversation online as if we were all in a room together. Send us your questions and comments online by emailing us at questions@pdxcityclub.org or engage with us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook using @pdxcityclub and or the hashtag CityClubDebate. You can also, of course, use the YouTube comment section. Whether you ask a question, share the link with a friend, or just watch the debate to get informed, all of us at City Club want to thank you for participating today. Thanks also to our sponsors, SEIU 49 and The Standard, in addition to our amazing media partners, X-Ray FM and KGW. Democracy must press on. In fact, we have a couple more election-related online events coming up before election season is over. This Friday, May 1st, is the Metro District 5 debate, and then our last online election-related program is May 8th for our May ballot measure forum. Mark your calendars and subscribe to our YouTube channel today, youtube.com/pdxcityclub. Now, please join me in welcoming today's candidates for Portland Commissioner Position 1, Candace Avalos, Tim Du Bois, and Carmen Rubio. In a moment, each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves before we dive into our questions for the evening. Each question has a 60-second time limit for candidate responses. We will do brief one-word answer lightning round as well. Finally, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement at the end of today's program. There's a timer off screen that only the candidates and I can see, which will indicate for them when time is up. We ask that candidates finish your statements and responses when your time is up, or I will politely, friendly, firmly chime in to remind you that your time has expired. Let's get started. The speaking order was determined at random ahead of time, and we will begin with Carmen Rubio, before Tim Du Bois, and then Candace Avalos. Let's begin with those opening remarks. Carmen, please take it away.
Hello, thank you, Colin, and thank you, City Club, for continuing to hold opportunities for civic engagement during this time. It's more important than ever. Hi, my name is Carmen Rubio, and I'm a candidate for City Council Position 1. I come from a hardworking farm worker family that came to this country for opportunities and a better life. My grandparents and my parents instilled strong values of taking care of one another and respect for hard work. And seeing the struggles that my family went through sparked a fire in me that never left. I understood at a very young age about the importance of community, of justice, and also not settling for less or for mistreatment. This led me to work for progressive elected officials and eventually run a leading Latinx nonprofit serving youth and families in our community. And throughout my career, I have been a leader, an advocate for working families, immigrants, and communities of color. And I'm running because I believe that communities in every part of the city deserve to be heard and have a voice on City Council, not just those that can afford access or power. I had an early experience when I was a policy staffer for Serena Cruz that drove this home for me when I got a phone call from a Spanish-speaking woman who called to ask for help with a legal document. This story stuck with me for a couple reasons. First, her experience felt very familiar. It reminded me of my own experiences with my family and the family experiences they had as they tried to navigate systems with no supports. So this means, especially in this time We need leaders who can hit the ground running. In addition to my years in public policy, I have 10 years experience at running and growing organization, and that has led me to be a strong advocate, but with management chops, and I will bring that to City Council. And this means making hard decisions, addressing budget challenges, and holding a vision for change and justice on behalf of staff, participants in the community. This is the experience that I have, and now I'm very eager to bring that spirit for justice and change to City Hall. And I hope I can do that by earning your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Tim, please introduce yourself. Tim, I believe you might be muted. If you are able to unmute yourself and give us a 2-minute introduction.
Apologize. Yes. Hello, my name is Tim Du Bois. I'm running for position 1. I am not a politician, but I am a husband and father of 2 young boys. I know how difficult it can be to find an affordable daycare away from polluting highways and rail yards. In case you want to know, I have a plan for that. I am an 18-year veteran of woodworking and carpentry. I know the challenges of life associated with working a job where you shower after work. I've been a student for 9 years now, the last 3 getting a master's in urban planning. I understand the intersection of our physical environment and human behavior, the core of city government. I have balanced successfully working full-time, going to school part-time, 3 internships, a neighborhood association board member term, and most importantly, sharing equally the role of raising our 2 young boys with my working wife. I believe this makes me uniquely qualified to juggle the competing roles of a legislator, executive, and despite being a first-time candidate and novice, though improving public speaker, I have pulled together a ragtag team of dedicated individuals entirely new to electoral politics and have a campaign that is virtually indistinguishable from establishment candidates, both in exposure and fundraising. I want to bring this ability to connect talented individuals, build healthy relationships, and promote ideas of equity, clean air and parks, and responsible government that I have brought to this campaign and bring it to City Hall. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Tim. Candace, if you could give us your 2-minute introduction.
Great. Hi, Portland. My name is Candace Avalos. I'm running for position 1. I'm super excited to be here, and thank you so much to Colin and to City Club for offering these opportunities. I really think that it models how I'd like to see our government engage with the people in new and creative ways in the 21st century. So thank you so much for this. I'm a first-generation Black-Tina, so my family comes from, the Black side of my family is from the Jim Crow South in Virginia. The Latinx side of my family came from Guatemala in the 1970s, and my grandparents brought my mom across the border for a new life. And the experiences of my multiracial family have really informed my values about democracy and also about how my voice is represented in the decisions that get made in my community. So I decided to get involved really young in student engagement. I did student government all through college, high school, college, grad school. And then now actually I work with student government at Portland State University. I've been an educator for 10 years. I teach classes on civic engagement and leadership. And those experiences led me to get more involved in the city. So I decided to step up and be on the Citizen Review Committee, where I serve as the acting chair. It's a police accountability board for the city of Portland. And seeing the dysfunction in the background really made me think twice about whether, could I lead this city? Could I really have a voice for the people? And I thought, yeah, I think that there's a voice of a generation that's left behind by the economy and left out of the conversation. And I really feel that we need a new generation of leaders to solve our old problems. So I'm running for a lot of reasons, addressing our housing crisis. We need to make it politically and morally unacceptable for people to be houseless, climate change, changing our form of government. All of these things, I think that we need a new voice to do that. And I feel that I am an experienced collaborator and strategic leadership thinker that can do that for City Hall. So I'm really hoping to earn your vote today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Candace, and thank you to all of the candidates. Let's get started with our prepared questions, and then we'll move on to a lightning round and then audience questions. So I think it's important that we begin by acknowledging the elephant in the room that is the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, not all coronavirus responses have been created equally across the country. Some cities have significantly mitigated the impact of the virus and instilled confidence in their residents, while others are struggling to stay afloat. Whoever is elected to city council, you can be certain that you will spend much of your term dealing with the fallout from decisions being made right now. Looking back at the last 2 or 3 months, what do you believe the city of Portland has gotten right about its response to COVID-19? And what would you do differently? We'll start with Tim, then go to Candace, then Carmen. So again, that question is, looking back at the last 2 or 3 months, what do you believe the city of Portland has gotten right about its response to COVID-19? And what would you do differently? Tim, 1 minute, please.
Great, thank you. I think there has been a real move in City Hall to focus on stopping evictions, and I think the goal of that is admirable. What I will tell you as someone who understands real estate is that there is going to be an eviction moratorium regardless of whether the City Council acts upon that. There's no one lining up to fill these vacancies. And so I think that was a symbolic win that had no real substantive victory. I think most importantly, the city should have been focusing on trying to make sure that we stay near hospital capacity, but low enough that we could deal with fluctuations in cases. This way we can get through herd immunity quicker and less impact on the economy while protecting the most vulnerable.
Thank you, Tim. Candace, what do you believe the city of Portland has gotten right about its response to COVID-19, and what would you do differently?
Well, I think where we got it right is that we acted pretty quickly. And I really appreciate that Portland was a leader in this moment to say, hey, we really need to follow health officials and take action and make sure that we're protecting our community. I think that where we are going to need to improve, and I agree that coming into this position, a lot of what we're going to be doing is going to be talking about the COVID-19 recovery. And I think communication is crucial. Because right now what I'm seeing is I'm hearing from small business owners, I'm hearing from people that are on the verge of losing their homes, that it's hard to find resources. And that's the job of the government, is to consolidate those resources. So I really think that that is going to be really crucial in this next step. And I also think that small businesses are at the core of our recovery. So I would like to see some more funds getting allocated to Prosper Portland, for example, or other avenues to make sure that we're channeling that money directly back to these businesses. And then also I think that, we've obviously, people have been living on the edge for a long time, and it's really exacerbated in this crisis. So I want to see us put more money into rental.
Candace.
Thanks, sorry, I lost
the
timer. Thank you, I'm gonna find it.
It happened. I imagine we will all have at least one small technical glitch.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Carmen, what do you think we've gotten right about our response to COVID-19, and what would you do differently?
Well, I really appreciate the leadership that Mayor Wheeler and other local leaders have taken. They took a very aggressive position in pushing to close, for the stay home, stay safe order. So I appreciate that. I do think, though, that one thing that this crisis has crystallized for us is the deep economic disparities and racial disparities that exist in our community. And that is something that I believe have just highlighted things that we in communities of color have known, that have been here all along, have been advocating, but it's become top of line that we need to address immediately. We need to make sure that we have the resources and that we have a communication infrastructure so that when these things happen, that we have lightning fast response and deep into these communities from trusted sources that they know and understand. We can see the impact of this disparity in the high rates of in communities of color. Sorry.
Thank you. Shifting gears, which I will foreshadow is going to be the theme of the night as we try to cover the various critical roles of the City Council. Housing displacement is an old and ongoing problem in Portland, from redlining to urban renewal to the siting of the Convention Center, Moda Center, and various freeways. government policy has often been a driver of the displacement of Black communities specifically and low-income households generally. What is your plan for reducing and reversing the displacement of communities of color, low-income people, and renters in Portland? We'll start with Candace and then go to Carmen and then Tim.
Well, this is really a huge reason why I'm running on a platform of changing our form of government and bringing district representation to Portland. Because I believe that when we have people that represent our neighborhoods and the different communities that those neighborhoods reflect, we're going to get better at making decisions that aren't going to harm these neighborhoods. Because often the people that are making the decisions don't come from these places and they don't share these lived experiences. And so that's why I think that it's at the core of so many of the issues that we need to address when talking about houselessness, when talking about growth and how we improve our infrastructure. So I really feel that representation is a key in that. And I also just think that we really need to be better collaborators. We have so many different functions across, different municipalities. And I think that they need to be working better together. I think districts could help that too, so that you could work better with your MOCO and Metro partners. But I really feel that's at the heart of how we're going to address displacement.
Thank you very much. Carmen, what is your plan for reducing and reversing the displacement of communities of color, low-income people, and renters?
Well, I first believe in what is a very common saying in advocacy communities and communities of color, no decisions about us without us. And that includes front and center our city planning, any development that happens in our city. We need more representation from top to bottom, vertically and horizontally. We need to make sure that we are capacitating communities so that they can understand developing issues in their neighborhoods, fund community groups, and engage with communities to make sure that we have opportunities for engagement in diverse avenues. Also, make sure that we have funding to keep small businesses and minority-owned businesses in their neighborhoods. And this is something that Prosper Portland is moving in that direction, and it's been really great to see. And then finally, making sure our bureaus actually represent and have staff that look like the communities they are working with. That's where the expertise will come from.
Thank you so much. Tim, what is your plan for reducing and reversing displacement in Portland?
Sorry about that. Thank you. Yes. Displacement is mostly a problem of exclusive neighborhoods with great amenities being prohibited or prohibited in those neighborhoods. And so people who have resources will want to go there, will want to live there, find that they cannot find the housing, and they will bleed into other neighborhoods. We need to open up every neighborhood to all incomes. That is the first and foremost thing we should be focusing on. I think RIP is one strategy for that, but there are many others. Outside of that, we should be focusing on Section 8 vouchers, housing vouchers, so a program that I firmly believe in. And as a landlord who has a voucher recipient, I believe it is a viable and fantastic program to work with. This way, housing voucher recipients can have the choice of what neighborhood they want to live in. And I think that will empower them more than any other government program we can come up with.
Thank you, Tim. Let's talk about policing. In January, the Trump administration determined that the city of Portland is in, quote, substantial compliance with the 2014 settlement agreement designed to reform how the Portland police engage with people in mental health crises. This came just about a month after a Portland police officer shot and killed Coben Henriksen, raising questions among community activists about whether Portland police have done sufficient work to reform its practices and prevent officer-involved shootings. To what extent do you believe the Portland Police Department is sufficiently accountable to communities of color and people with mental illness? And are there additional reforms or changes you would advocate for? We'll start with Carmen, and then Tim, and then Candace. Carmen, please kick us off.
So yes, I absolutely think that we need some change in our police bureau, and that would start with culture change, and that starts with leadership. I also think that we need to focus on demilitarizing our police force and making sure that they have more community-centered approaches, and also have start reforming the ways that we recruit and hire for a police force. We need a police force that not only reflects us, but protects us. And we do this by making sure that we build trust with communities, and that starts with culture change. Once we attract a more diverse workforce, we can then also look at changing the way that we do psych evaluations and vetting processes to make sure that we're vetting for people that are community centered, that understand the experience of communities of color, Black people and Indigenous people in this community, and make
Thank
sure.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tim, do you believe the Portland Police are sufficiently accountable to communities of color and people with mental illness? And are there additional reforms or changes you would advocate for in the department?
I think there's a lot of room for increased accountability for our police officers. So that discussion should never end. It should always be dynamic, and we should try to get more from our police in terms of accountability. With that being said, of all middle and large cities, we have the lowest per capita police force. And I know from talking to police officers, they're exhausted, their overtime is mandatory, and they're overworked. And I know in my own life, when you're overworked, you're not well rested, you start to make bad decisions. So I think we can take this from two perspectives. And one is making sure that accountability is there, especially for communities of color. And then finally, we should make sure that our police force has the support and the work environment to make better decisions.
Thank you. Candace, do you believe that Portland Police are sufficiently accountable to communities of color and people with mental illness? And are there additional reforms or changes you would advocate for?
1 minute is not enough time for me to talk about the different changes I want to see to police accountability. And obviously, I have a lot of experience in this because I'm the acting chair of the Citizen Review Committee. You know, I think culture change is great, but that cannot come without true independent review of the police. And that is where accountability happens. Currently, the Citizen Review Committee, we're an all-citizen board that is an appeals board, and we make decisions on cases. And unfortunately, we have to be unnecessarily deferential to the police in those decisions because of our standard of review. So number one, I want to see that change happen. And it's one of the big reasons I decided to join this race, because we have been advocating for it for years, literally years. We have community group support, we have support in City Hall, but we just keep getting stalled. And it really is going to take some courageous leadership to go in there and say, until we have a true independent review of the police, accountability and culture change are not going to happen. So that's a very small answer to a large problem. And I have a lot of thoughts about this, but we need to improve it immediately.
Thank you. The nature of our form of government here in Portland is that commissioners don't just set policy and budget for the city, they are responsible for the direct oversight of large bureaucracies. What experience do you have managing large budgets and staff, and how will your management approach have to change in the context of a government agency? We'll start with Tim, and then Candace, and then Carmen. Tim, please kick us off.
Yeah, thank you for this question. This has come up, and it appears to be my biggest vulnerability, but I disagree. I have managed teams as a lead carpenter. They are small teams. Yeah, I manage 5 people, and frankly, so do managers of large operations. If you're managing 10, 20 people, you're not delegating responsibility. I can manage who then teams. Finally, the size of a budget is not the key element. It does not matter how many zeros are in a budget. It is about cash flow. It is whether you are making money, you are losing money. And in government, losing money can be okay. You can justify it for a number of reasons, and I believe I'm willing to balance that need. However, we should also strive to try to reduce how much money our government is losing in certain programs.
Thank you. Candace, what experience do you have managing large budgets and staff, and how will your approach have to change in the context of a government agency?
Well, I'm really familiar with government systems because Portland State University is really a microcosm of city government in a lot of ways. And my experience comes from my oversight of the student fee committee, for example, at Portland State, where we allocate $18 million to various organizations, departments, groups around campus to serve students in a lot of ways, including my department and student activities. And I feel that a lot of my experience around how I have led students through a process that is values-based, that can take into account the fact that, you're managing people's lived experiences here. There's personnel in that budget, and that means a lot more than, a 5% budget cut, right? So I think that I do have a lot of experience in navigating the difficulty of making shifts in budgets and recognizing that, people are ultimately tied to those budgets. And I think that I will bring a lot of that government experience in that student fee process to City Hall.
Excellent, thank you. And wrap us up, Carmen, what experience do you have managing large budgets and staff, and how will your approach have to change?
Well, there's nothing like the weight and responsibility of running an organization where you are responsible for payroll, you're responsible for ensuring that you have a positive and supportive work environment, and that you're producing good results from the work that you do. When I first started at Latino Network, we had a budget of under $600,000. And over the last 10 years, I've had to work hard, learn how to manage, learn how to manage a growing budget, a diverse staff that's growing, multiple programs, multiple funders, and fundraising. And today we're an organization that grew from 5 people under me to an organization of 120 staff with a budget, an operating budget this year of $10.2 million. There's been a lot of hard decisions that I've had to make, a lot of lessons along the way, but it requires judgment, collaboration, and a lot of leadership lessons and experience.
Thank you. City Club's recent research on equity and the form of city government potentially has major implications for the city's charter, our local constitution. Every 10 years, the Portland City Council appoints a charter review commission to research and refer to voters proposed changes to that charter. This process is right around the corner, slated for 2021. What qualities, perspectives, or issues would you prioritize in selecting community members to serve on the Charter Review Commission? We'll start with Candace, go to Carmen, and then wrap up with Tim.
I am super eager to help oversee this process because I think it is long overdue that we make these changes to our government. And I believe that within this process is where those changes need to happen. I think that, I do have a lot of experience just in general being a collaborative leader that can bring together different voices to the table to make decisions that reflect all of our interests. And I think that that's going to be a huge asset in City Hall when we're going to have to do this big overhaul. In addition to, I'm very familiar with government systems. You want to talk about student government and the work that I've done there, but also on the national stage with student governments and how we talk about how government helps its constituents. So I feel I have a lot to offer when it comes to how we can make those changes. And I think that, I want to see people like me reflected on that commission, and especially young voices. I think that they need to be a part of that discussion because it's going to affect them the most.
Thank you very much. Carmen, what qualities, perspectives, or issues would you prioritize in selecting people to serve on the Charter Review Commission?
I'm a very big proponent for this change. It's long overdue. It needs to happen. And I would very much prioritize the experiences of people in East Portland and from other communities that have traditionally and historically been marginalized or shut out of processes such as these and have resulted in large disparities or no trust with the city. I'd prioritize communities of color, particularly those that have low or no engagement with communities, small businesses that also have a vested interest and have a big role in our economic recovery from this crisis, and also our immigrant and refugee communities. that have often not been welcome and often feel excluded from processes such as these. The perspective or the qualities that I would want participants to bring with them is an ability to learn, the ability to change their mind, and also
Thank you.
consider it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tim, what qualities, perspectives, or issues would you prioritize in selecting community members to serve on the Charter Review Commission?
I think I share a lot in common with the other candidates here. I think this is a great opportunity to lift the voices who have not traditionally had a voice. And that definitely includes people in North Portland and far Southeast and East Portland. So unequivocally, there is an opportunity to lift those voices, bring them to the table. I think it is also important that we make sure that those who will lose some power, which is not a problem, not a bad thing, but those who represent neighborhood associations also have some say in that, so that we can make sure that moving forward, the neighborhood our city represents those of everyone in Portland, regardless of the ability to have high participation in neighborhood meetings. So, thank you.
Thank you. Transportation is constantly at the top of surveys of issues Portlanders are most focused on. Even during the stay-at-home order, the fight over how our streets are used continue, with debates over whether streets should be closed to cars or open to accommodate the increased flow of pedestrians. What do you think the City of Portland should be prioritizing in its transportation policy in the coming years? We'll start with Carmen, and then Tim, and then Candace.
I absolutely believe that the City of Portland should be prioritizing multimodal systems of mass transit. We need to get more people out of their cars and off the road onto bicycles, and also onto buses. We need to do what we can as a city to advocate for more bus routes and greater transit options in East Portland and other areas of Portland that are underserved, more routes that are dependable for commuters, so that they're not waiting extensively or having to take 2 or 3 buses to get to the places they need to, that actually impacts their quality of life. I would also want to explore our opportunities for other kinds of mass transit up and down the I-5 corridor that are not about creating more roads, but looking at opportunities for more bus lanes, more high-speed lanes, and also increasing safety and sidewalks in underserved areas.
Thank you. Tim, what do you think the City of Portland should be prioritizing in its transportation policy in the coming years?
Well, I have said it. Transportation is a secondary good for fun. They typically do not. They are going from one land use to another land use. So transportation is an issue of land use, and we have a lot of room to grow there. When we think about where we should put housing, there is the desire to put it next to transit, and that is an admirable goal. We should actually be focusing on bringing our high density housing to inner Portland, particularly Central East Side, that is currently restricted to industrial and a low density source of jobs. And people who live there won't even need transit because they'll be able to walk everywhere. And that's where we should be focusing on. We need to get people to be able to walk to their entertainment, to their jobs, to their friends' houses, and that's going to be better for the environment. Outside of that, we should be focusing on transit and pricing our automobiles properly.
Thank you. Thank you. Candace, what do you think the City of Portland should be prioritizing in its transportation policy in coming years?
Transportation is really at the heart of a growing city, because when the city continues to grow, we need to help people move around it quicker. That's going to not only be good for the environment if we create opportunities for people to get out of their cars and use these other systems of transportation, but it's also just good for how we design, our neighborhoods, right? So those 15-minute neighborhoods that are so important, and I really want to see us expand in Portland, we really need to prioritize transportation as a part of our future housing development. So I definitely echo a lot of the sentiments that were shared from the other candidates. And I think, I'm a commuter, so it's personal for me. I recently moved, and it took me a long time to find a place that I could manage living kind of close to work, and but it's complicated, right? So my point is that I think that we need to prioritize moving transportation east, increasing it, making buses connect to the maxes, things like that.
Thank you. Our last regular question before we move into the lightning round and then on to audience questions. In his exit interview with City Club, former Commissioner Dan Saltzman noted that many city commissioners fail to prioritize which issue they'll focus on, which in the end reduces their overall effectiveness. If elected, what will your top priority be? What will be that thing that you spend the most political capital on in your first year in office? We'll start with Tim, and then Candace, and then Carmen.
Thank you. My educational background and my passions are in housing policy. So that is where I will strictly focus my greatest political abilities. Sorry, that didn't make any sense. There was a developer a number of years back who showed the city that he could provide new units for somewhere between 60 and 100,000 a unit without any public subsidies. And currently it costs somewhere from 250 to 450,000 for the same thing. The private sector will deliver affordable housing. We are standing in the way. So I will work endlessly to find a better balance. Is the 60 to 100,000 the best balance? Probably not. The materials are probably lower than we should allow, and work pay is probably less than it should be. But we can find a better balance to where the private sector can provide us the housing that we need.
Thank you. Candace, what will your top priority be? Where will you spend your political capital in your first year in office?
Well, I realize that changing our form of government is a long-term goal. It is a high priority for me coming into office because I really think that it is at the root of so many of our problems, not only in how our bureaus are working collaboratively to address things like houselessness and transportation and climate change, but also in how the commissioners work together too, and have strategic planning that is long-term and is going to come up with solutions that are more sustainable. So that is a huge issue that I want to dedicate a lot of my time to, in addition to changing how our government serves the people. That's something I'm really passionate about. I'm passionate about how we interface technology with government services and make sure that people have new and creative ways to engage with the people that are making decisions on their behalf. So those are they go hand in hand. Those are two huge areas I'm going to focus a lot of my energy.
Thank you very much. Carmen, what will your top priority be? Where will you spend your political capital in the first year in office?
My first year will include keeping Portland affordable for families in Portland. And at the top of that list is housing and making sure that we are preventing people from becoming homeless. We are keeping people housed because it all starts with getting your basic needs met. So making sure that there's utilities in place, the water isn't shut off, that you have energy support, that you have rent assistance that you need, that we have vouchers. I agree with the voucher system that my colleague had said. I've explored that as well. But it also means that we're making sure that housing gets built more quickly, streamlining the permitting system across the bureaus that touch housing so that we can get the money out the door and built right away. These are the kinds of things that we need to make sure that we have some stable things in place for our most vulnerable communities.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all. So we're going to move to a lightning round. So the kind of main rule of this round is one-word answers. I trust that all of you, none of you will cheat, none of you will try and go on, and that you'll keep it tight and succinct. And by succinct, I mean one word. So a couple questions. Let's start with, what neighborhood do you live in? Candace.
Hollywood.
Carmen.
Rose City Park.
And Tim.
Selwood, Westmoreland.
Do you support the Oregon Transportation Commission's decision to move forward on the I-5 Rose Quarter Freeway expansion without an environmental impact statement? Carmen?
No.
Tim?
No.
Candace?
No.
How do you plan to vote in November on IP34, a proposed ballot measure to license psilocybin mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, to be overseen by the Oregon Health Authority? How will you vote, Tim?
Affirmative.
Candace?
Yes.
Carmen?
I will say yes. I would love to explore more. Sorry.
Absolutely. How do you plan to vote on IP44, a measure intended to decriminalize drug possession and direct people to expanded drug treatment and recovery services funded by the existing marijuana tax? Candace?
Absolutely.
Carmen?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And how do you plan to vote in November on the Metro Transportation Bond, which will pursue large-scale transportation infrastructure projects, most likely through a combination of vehicle registration and income taxes, raising approximately $400 million? Carmen?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Candace?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for sticking with it. I know it's always hard when you want to explain why you're voting a certain way or why you're thinking about a certain thing. Much appreciated. So we are going to transition now. For those of you just tuning in, this is City Club of Portland coming to you with our virtual debate for Commissioner Position 1 with Candace Avalos, Tim Du Bois, and Carmen Rubio. I'm your moderator, Colin Jones, and we ask that you support City Club with a donation right now, or anytime you want, but right now is a really great time to do it by texting Support City Club to 44321. That's Support City Club to 44321. This allows us to keep bringing you this important election coverage. We are now going to move to questions that we have received from the public. So first, in 2013, voters passed an arts tax, which has significantly increased arts education in Portland and increased resources for large arts institutions in the city. It's also received seemingly unending criticism over the last several years. Would you support repealing, maintaining, or amending the arts tax? And if you support amendments, what changes do you think are necessary? We'll start with you, Tim, and then go to Candace, and then finally Carmen.
I'm in support of the arts tax. I happily pay it every year, and I think the main problem that the arts tax has is an educational problem. I don't think people know what it's actually going to, and so there can be things we can do to help highlight the good it does in our community. I know in particular at my my son's school, Llewellyn, the arts teacher, the music teacher that is, her salary is paid for by that. So I'm very thankful to have that for my kids.
Awesome, thank you. Candace, would you support repealing, maintaining, or amending the arts tax? And if you support amendment, what changes do you think are most necessary?
Yeah, I think that the arts tax is something that's really unique to Portland. And I remember when I first moved here, I thought it was a cool idea. And but I think that there's a lot of confusion around how those funds get allocated. Like Tim was saying, I agree that there's an education problem there. I would support probably amending it, mostly just to address where those funds are going and being more transparent about that. But overall, I support the intent of the arts tax. And I think that it's honestly just like all the other taxes that, you know, it's the government's responsibility to be clear about how they're using the public dollar and to be good stewards of that money. So I think like so many other taxes, I want to see increased transparency and communication to the people about how their funds are getting spent.
Thank you.
Spended.
Thank you. Carmen, would you support repealing, maintaining, or amending the arts tax? And if you support amendment, what changes do you think are most necessary?
I support the arts tax and the impact of this revenue source and how it has become something that is relied upon by a lot of community organizations and schools. However, I do believe I do support amending it as well. And the reason for that is because in my calls that I've been making, my phone banking, I am encountering people who have a lot of confusion about the arts tax and not seeing the impact of it. So I would support making administrative changes to make sure that it's not more expensive to run than it needs to be. Making sure those administrative the infrastructure is more integrated into the city structure so that it has and it's maintained and the oversight and regular checks are there as a part of regular city business. And then finally, more communication about where that money is going so that the public can actually see that investment.
Thank you. So a question about the city workforce. How will you work towards the retention of people of color, real diversity and inclusion within the workforce of various bureaus? We'll start with Candace, and then Carmen, and then Tim.
So one thing I always say about diversity and inclusion is that diversity is having people at the table, but inclusion is making sure that they have a voice. And I think that that is where we are critically lacking in Portland City Hall. Not only is there unfortunately a lack of good representation, in my opinion, but we have to learn how to step aside for new voices to come in, and that's totally why I'm running for office. So I think that it's important too, as we're looking at government in general, that people are retiring and we're not doing a great job of recruiting a new generation into government. If we explain to young people that these jobs have a purpose and we give them avenues to be invested in the work of the city and invest their ideas back into the city, we're going to have a better and stronger commitment by different kinds of communities to come into this government work. So I really want to prioritize internships to bring in new voices into City Hall and build up a new generation of voices for our future.
Thank you very much. Carmen, how will you work to retain people of color and support real diversity and inclusion within the workforce of the various bureaus?
I would absolutely make sure that we are doing what we can to create a respectful environment, an environment that sustains our current workers, that we have good practices in place to retain workers of color and other underrepresented workers, that we're looking and that we do an audit internally to look at where the disparities are, not just in numbers, but in terms of positions. We need to look, we have a lot of disproportionate folks of color at the city that are a lot of frontline workers, which are very important roles. And we know that we need people in leadership positions. So what are those internal pipelines? Why are people not getting promoted? And what do we need to do to change those things to make sure that there's an internal track to do so? Also, how are we recruiting and preparing young people for jobs at the city? I am very in support of paid internships and also opportunities to grow.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Tim, how will you work toward retaining a diverse workforce and supporting real inclusion within the various bureaus?
Yeah, there's no way I can answer this as well as my rivals here. Everything they said is spot on. I believe retaining people of color in an administration, in a government, is about culture, work culture, the office culture. And from my perspective, I would need to listen. I would need to hear. I would need to lift the voices of those who are living that experience. Because I don't have to. I'm very fortunate with my I have privileges. I think actually fortunate is the wrong thing, because I think being challenged in life is incredibly valuable. So I think internships is definitely an opportunity, and then expanding those people in leadership. So I agree with everything my rival said on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We got a question around homelessness. would you continue the sweeps of houseless communities? Under what circumstances, if any, is it appropriate for the city to be sweeping houseless communities? We'll start with Carmen, and then Tim, and then Candace.
I am not supportive of homeless sweeps. I feel like we can think of better ways and more ways that respect the dignity of people that are living on the streets, and finding ways to collaborate around solutions so that we can have a path for people to actually pursue, that we're not just moving people on a path to nowhere, which is what's happening now. Also, I'm very supportive of the city's efforts right now at making sure that we have social workers on the streets instead of calling our first responders. So this is a direction that we need to move more into, a more compassionate approach that recognizes the humanity and the dignity of the people that are Portlanders too.
Thank you very much. Tim, under what circumstances, if any, is it appropriate for the city to be sweeping houseless communities?
I agree that it shouldn't be a first act. And I think also it is actually symbolic of our failure in our housing policies more generally. There are instances, of course, though, I believe that it is warranted. And those are instances where other people, other communities' lives are in danger by contact with these some of the larger camps, and that is not meant to take away the dignity and the rights of people who live in those communities. This is a very difficult situation we're in, and we should absolutely work with compassion. So is there room for them? Probably. I really don't want that to be the first strategy, and if some of the larger policies we get right, we wouldn't have to do it in the first place, and that is where we should be going.
Thank you. Candace, under what circumstances, if any, is it appropriate for the city to be sweeping houseless communities?
For me, the only circumstance that it's appropriate is if we're moving them into shelters or we're moving them into self-governed spaces that is going to coordinate care and have, a case management system offered by the city and other municipalities to make sure that people are on the right path. I think that Portland Street Response is a really good start at that, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the implementation and seeing how we can grow that program and make it work. And people on the streets, they need things. They need water, they need sanitation, they have real basic needs that I believe is the responsibility of the city to meet. And I also realize that it's complicated, and we want to have people be held accountable, and but it also doesn't mean that everybody that is houseless deserves to have a jail cell or handcuffs as the solution. So I think that we can learn a lot from the education sector and how we address case management to, address the different needs of people. We have many houseless students that we work with, and I'd really like to see those systems improved.
Thank you. What two bureaus would you love to manage and why? We'll start with Tim, and then Candace, and then Carmen.
The top two bureaus that I would see could be development services and planning and sustainability. I believe that they are the bureaus that I would best fit into, given my educational background and my work experience. I would love to make the focus actually our comprehensive plans, have them be a little bit more dynamic so that they're not a document that's produced and then just has to get reproduced many years later. It should change. It should be adaptable and dynamic, and then maybe we can have it so we don't have to dedicate millions of dollars to redo it every now and then. And I think that there are great opportunities there, especially in BDS. We should digitize it, make things easier, make it a department where people are not saying, no, I have no idea, go talk to this person. Let's get the employees to be able to give proper answers quickly.
Thank you. Candace, what two bureaus would you love to manage and why?
Now, I don't know if the mayor is going to give it to me, but I would really love to oversee the Portland Police Bureau. I obviously have invested a lot of work into the changes that I believe we need to make in our police bureau. And I feel that I can offer a good perspective and just how we increase our accountability and how we help the police improve their relationship with the community and build that trust that they need to do their job well, honestly. Another area that I would love to oversee is the Office of Community and Civic Life. I think that it is at the core of so many of the functions of our government. How do people engage with our government? How do people feel represented by the government? I really want to upgrade that office to be more digital. I want to see us have new ways that we engage with people. So I feel that I have a lot of experience in that area that I could offer for the Office of Community and Civic Life.
Thank you. Carmen, what two bureaus are you most eager to manage and why?
I'm very eager to manage the Housing Bureau for one. This bureau is at the heart of cross-cutting issues that connect the federal government, state, county, and other local governments in the region to address the housing shortage that we have and the homelessness crisis that we have. And currently in my work, I'm very engaged in the Here Together Coalition, which is endeavoring to secure funds to address these challenges. So I really am very excited to be a part of the implementation of these new approaches. The other bureau that I'm very interested in is Portland Parks and Recreation. Our parks and recreation services are among the most accessible resources that our city provides currently, and they're relied upon and utilized by very diverse and low-income and working families. And again, in my experience, I have had many opportunities to partner with Portland Parks and Rec and see the tremendous opportunities that we have to do an even better job of outreaching to these communities and expanding access.
Thank you very much. We talk a lot about a lack of supply of affordable housing here in Portland. What are your specific plans to increase the supply of housing that is affordable to people at sort of the 60 to 100% of the median income? We will start with Candace, and then Carmen, and then Tim.
Yeah, so I would really love to see us build affordable housing affordably. And I think that what that's going to take is some innovation. I think we can really learn from a lot of other cities and how they're creating different kinds of housing because our needs are different. If we no longer need these large single family homes, there are people that are living on their own that just need a little bit of space. There are people that have large families, and we need a more of a diversity of the housing stock. And I also just think that we really need to be better about including these different voices, especially when it comes to renters. That's something, I'm a renter, and I think that my generation, we're having a really hard time buying a home. And so I think that's our new reality across the country, and how we're making space available not only for people to buy homes, but for them to rent them, I think is going to be an important piece in how we're talking about affordability.
Thank you. Carmen, what are your specific plans to increase the affordable housing supply for people at 60 to 100% of median income?
I do believe that to meet our housing needs, we do need more housing at every income level to be available. But I do believe that we still do need more opportunities for those that make less than $45,000 a year. I believe the market will address housing at the higher income levels, and that government can help to address housing to serve our lower income neighbors and community members. And this could be accomplished through a mix of rent assistance, housing vouchers, etc. But I also do think that other opportunities that other cities are looking at are interesting and that we should explore, such as co-housing. That's something that I've been reading about a lot more lately. We do want those denser neighborhoods so that we can have the 20-minute neighborhoods that everybody wants to see, and that our city has been professing to really care about. And what this means, though, is that we're going to have to be open to changes. Our city's growing up, and this means that we have to be open to new ideas.
Thank you. And Tim, what are your specific plans to increase the affordable housing supply for folks at 60 to 100% of median income?
First and foremost, the focus on reducing SDC charges and permitting both cost and time to get permits. The addition I did of a 3-bedroom apartment cost me around $40,000 in permits and SDC charges. That made it cost more. In addition, the larger projects have to deal with very long delays, tradesmen shortages, so we should work on workforce training, and then more innovative types of housing, such as modular housing. There's been a lot of innovation. I think there's a lot of room to get more of a mass-produced form of large apartments, and that will unequivocally bring down the cost. And it's about our last opportunity, because as they are right now, every apartment building is a custom crafted thing that will always cost more than what lower income people can ever afford. So we need to innovate.
Thank you very much. The managing police in Portland is often comes down to managing the police union contract and influencing what gets included and what doesn't get included in that contract. Many advocates have accused the Portland Police Union of ensuring concessions to reduce the accountability of police officers. What do you think are the most important changes needed to the police union contract? We'll start with Carmen and then go to Tim and then Candace.
I definitely believe that there needs to be more accountability and the ability in the contract to have supervisors to reprimand officers or terminate officers if they are they should not be at the city of Portland. I also believe that there needs to be included the room and availability for more oversight and have more provisions in there for community-centered work to drive that, and training opportunities as well.
Excellent, thank you. Tim, what would you prioritize in changing within the Portland Police Union contract?
I think it's really important, and I've mentioned this already, that we focus on the hours that our officers are being forced to work. So I think that there needs to be clear guidelines for when overtime can be mandated or offered. And so I think there is probably our biggest opportunity to actually start solving some of the more foundational issues. Outside of that, I agree also that we need to start increasing accountability. Our police officers, their job is to enforce accountability of laws that we all have to live under. They live under the same laws and should be held accountable as well. Thanks.
Thank you. And Candace, what do you think are the most important changes needed to the Portland Police Union contract?
Well, I think the most important change is something that I have been fighting for and the CRC has been fighting for many years, and that is changing our standard of review. Currently, we have a reasonable person standard. Would a reasonable person, given the evidence, come to the same conclusion? And often the person that's making that conclusion is coming from within the police. And so when we have that standard, it makes it challenging for us to challenge that finding. So I would like to see our standard move to a preponderance of evidence. And we have been told over and over again that, I was saying earlier that we built these coalitions to make this change. We got some, buy-in from City Hall, and then it was a hard stop. And one thing that has been that hard stop is that it needs to happen during the contract. So it's contract time. I've been talking to the Mayor Wheeler and saying, when are we going to do this? We have been told that this is the time. And so this is something I'm going to be working on in the coming months. I think that that's a crucial change that needs to happen.
Thank you very much. One of the questions we received talks about how the city might have trouble retaining productive professionals and young families who might want to flee high and continually increasing taxes, underperforming or disinterested schools, and increased traffic here in Portland. Do you think that's an accurate characterization of what's happening in Portland? And if so, what will you do to counter it? We'll start with Tim, and then Candace, and then Carmen.
And I'm going to need you to repeat it because you went out a little bit, so I missed some of it. So when it gets to me,
yeah,
you could.
Absolutely, I will. Were you able to hear me, Tim?
At this point, I could use a re question as well.
Absolutely. So some people are concerned that Portland is driving away productive professionals and young families who are fleeing from high, increasingly rising taxes, underperforming schools, and increased traffic. Do you think that's a fair concern? And what would you do to address it?
Okay, great. Well, fortunately, I know that I know the census data on this, and that is actually not happening in that way. There are certainly some cities around the country where that is the case, but typically on your coastal cities, that is not happening. Are there isolated cases? Yes, and we should work on that. We should make it easier to be able to live in the city. We should make sure that the schools are better, and we can do this. These are not intractable problems. What is happening, the problem we have, is not that our educated or highly educated, rather, professionals are leaving the city. It's that they continue to move here faster than housing's getting built. And it's the people who could benefit from the economic opportunity of the city who are getting pushed out. So I do not believe that the data suggests happening in any large.
Thank you very much. Candace, do you have concerns about the city driving away young professionals and families, and what can we do to prevent that?
You know, whether the data supports it or not, I'm not sure, but I think the sentiment is absolutely there. And I think that people are feeling frustrated by not being able to live and work in the same city. So many of our working families are getting pushed to the boundaries of Portland, and it creates these transportation problems because, you know, they live far away, they don't have good bus or MAX systems, they're driving in, they're not able to afford to live near these good schools and near where they work. So, you know, I'm not sure what the data says, but I don't think that matters, because I think that that is a feeling of frustration that I definitely see and hear among, you know, my circles. And I definitely feel that from, you know, young people working with college students. Obviously, I'm on the ground and hearing what their challenges are. And again, left behind by the economy and left out of the conversation. And I absolutely feel that way. So I think that it's a problem, and we're going to need to address our overall livability of Portland. And that's going to be complex, but I believe that new voices can do that.
Thank you very much. And Carmen, do you have concerns about the city driving away productive professionals and young families, and what can we do to prevent that?
I also, like my colleagues, are not sure about the actual data, but I do know that some of the what I'm hearing in that question is something that I do know to be true, which is I think affordability can be a driver for folks to leave the city. As an executive director of a nonprofit organization that employs a lot of people, including young people and professional people, what I'm hearing are folks can't even afford to live in the cities that they're working anymore, in the city that they're working in anymore. And increasingly, I'm having staff who are driving in from way outside of Portland to come to work every day to do their job. And these are not the values that we want as a city that is promoting getting more cars off the road and being advocates of mass transit. We need to provide transit options and more opportunities for young people to have good jobs in this city. That's what we need, and housing.
Thank you very much. That is all the time that we have for questions today. So let's move to closing remarks. You'll each have 2 minutes to share with our audience and voters why they should vote for you for City Commissioner Position 1. We'll start with Candace, and then move to Carmen, and then Tim.
Sorry about that. I had to leave the frame for a second because my battery was running low on my computer, and I was like, oh no, let's not let that happen in the last minute. So thank you again so much. Thank you so much, Colin. Thank you so much, City Club, for offering this. You know what, I want to say real quick, hi to my grandma and to my mom, who I know are watching in Virginia. And, you know, I just feel so passionately about what a new generation of leadership is going to bring for Portland. I think we have such a great opportunity right now with 4 of these 5 seats being open, and dealing with the post COVID-19 recovery, that people are looking to the government and they're saying, you know what, we were told that you couldn't do that, and apparently you can. So I think that there's a lot of pressure on us coming in to redefine what government does and how we are creating these safety nets for people, because people are living in really fragile situations. So I am really eager to get into City Hall because I think that I can talk to or speak to those voices. I can represent these communities, and I'm also this is what I do. You know, I am very familiar with representing my peers and what that takes. It's challenging, you know, because of course not everybody is going to agree with you all of the time, and you know, it's hard to lead a city like Portland that's so dynamic. But I really feel that it's time for us to look to new leaders to solve our old problems, and I feel that that's me. So I'm also just really proud to bring my Black-Tina experiences, and especially I'm feeling emotional just because my grandpa passed recently, and he is just like what I have done everything for him and everything for my family. And, you know, this is what we came to this country for, so that we could be a voice and we could have more representation in these systems that supposedly this American dream that we came for, you know, it's like, where is it? And so I'm feeling really eager to get in there and come up with new ideas, and, you know, be a collaborator to bring all our voices together. So thank you so much. I hope to earn your vote.
Thank you very much, Candace. Carmen, please share with us in 2 minutes your closing thoughts and why people should vote for you.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you to City Club and everyone watching for giving us a chance to talk about what we care about. In this race, I feel like I'm the best choice for voters because I can hit the ground running. I'm an experienced advocate, I'm a manager, a collaborator, and I have a strong grounding in our community. And I also know how to get results. I've successfully led and participated in many local and state advocacy efforts that have resulted in real changes in education, in early childhood, in immigrant justice and juvenile justice. And I've also participated in things and efforts to fundraise hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, manage large programs and projects, and have direct responsibility over multi-million-dollar budgets with outcomes that I'm accountable to, specifically to the community served, which is the one that I care the most about. And now I'm eager to get to work on behalf of Portlanders in City Hall. And right now, the things that we stand for as Portlanders are under attack by this administration. And this coronavirus pandemic has crystallized these deep economic and racial disparities in our community. And as a commissioner, I'll work hard to lift workers up and lift up working families and lift up those that have been historically marginalized. And I'll do this by valuing the contributions of all Portlanders and maintaining strong lines of communication and not just at election time. And in these unprecedented times, we will need all of us so that we can rebuild our economy and tackle these disparities together. And especially now, Portlanders deserve a say in their government and have a role in making it work for all of us. And when elected, I will be the first Latinx in the history of this city to ever be elected. So now's the time for us to get involved, take action, and vote. And I'm asking for your support to help me make history this election. So please vote Carmen for Portland by May 19th. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And Tim, close us out with your ending remarks on why folks should vote for you.
Thank you. As has been made very clear during this debate, I am not the most polished and refined public speaker. I wish that the ability to answer 1 minute and 2 minute questions was a measure of success in office. I do not believe that is the case. I am a measured person. I like to follow the data. I like to follow the evidence with compassion. And that takes more time than 2 minutes and 1 minute. Carmen mentions her ability to hit the ground running, and I do not doubt her ability to do that. Unfortunately, during this election and this time, that is actually a weakness in that our city needs to rethink how it is working, because it is not working. The politicians, the elected officials who've been running the city government for a while now have failed on many measures and done well on others. Sam Chase recently mentioned that budget cuts and closing of services only happens during the tough times that we're about to hit. But the Columbia Pool's been threatened to get closed, and that was before COVID hit. And the Selwood Community Center also got closed by the Parks Department, saved by the neighborhood associations. I have fought very clean air in our communities. That is something that I think that we should focus on, and housing as a policy I've mentioned as well. We have fought to stick it to the developers whose investments come from state-funded pension funds and people like you and me with life insurance policies and things like that. So I think we really need to change the conversation, and doing business as it has been done is not going to work. And I think I can bring that new breath of fresh air. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our time is up for today. Thank you so much to candidates Candace Avalos, Tim Du Bois, and Cameron Rubio for joining us today. And thanks to all of you for joining us from home. Thank you again to today's sponsors, The Standard and SEIU 49, and to our media partners, KGW and X-Ray FM. In order for City Club to continue to provide quality, in-depth information to voters, especially in these uncertain times, we need your support. Make a donation today, whatever you can give. If everyone gave $5, we'd hit our goal. Just text Support City Club, all one word, to 44321. Let's find out what's possible when we truly make space for everyone to connect, share ideas, and build for the future. Thank you again. We are all done.